this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than just Peyton Manning. I'm also motivating Manning. When I say insurance, you say financial services. Insurance.
Financial services.
Insurance.
Financial services.
Now when I say nationwide, you say is both. Nationwide.
Is both.
Nationwide.
Is both.
For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
Hi, this is Gronk from Dudes on Dudes. I'm here to tell you about protecting your end zone with wet, extra large flushable Dude wipes. Unlike dry wiping with toilet paper, Dude wipes clear instead of smear. Wetter cleans better. Goodbye dingleberries. Goodbye itch and irritation. Plus, if you take Gronk-sized grumpies, or as I like to call them, Gronkies, baby wipes won't do. You need extra big Dude wipes to handle the job. So don't fumble the ball with toilet paper. Stop being an a-hole to your b-hole and start using Dude wipes. Available on Amazon and major retailers nationwide. Dude wipes. Best clean, pants down.
You're about to listen to the Late Round Fantasy Football Show, which originally aired yesterday on YouTube. If you'd like to catch it live, you can find it on the Late Round Fantasy Football YouTube channel at 1 p.m. Eastern every Friday during this 2025 season. That's on youtube.com/@LateRoundFF. So without further ado, here's this week's episode.
Welcome in, David Kitchen, COO of Late Round, with a guy who I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm a little bit disappointed because he's already said he's not doing the data dump next week.
Yeah.
What else? What else is not going to happen? This is going to be the last show of the year or something?
Yeah, it is. It is the last show of the year. Look, guys, I mean, it's not very easy to create content in terms of, like, I'll have all the written stuff on Patreon this week. Like, it'll be out there. You guys can get rankings and all that. But this year, especially, the way that Christmas falls on a Thursday, right? It's on a Thursday this year, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Having Wednesday, Thursday, Friday be, the Christmas Eve, Christmas, then the day after Christmas, which folks are now saying you should be off on the day after Christmas. Regardless, people don't realize that all the content is done the day before it gets published for the most part, but it's just difficult to do that next week. So yeah, there's no data dump that's going on. The one thing you will get is the 15 transaction show. That's still coming because that's really important for waiver moves and stuff. And then if you want, my rankings, or if you have questions about start sits and sleepers and all that kind of stuff, Patreon. I'm going to be very active on Patreon all week. It's just going to be via the written word as opposed to, podcasts and video and stuff, because kind of hard to do podcasts whenever you've got, family around and, big old Saint Nick coming to your house.
I saw a thing yesterday where it said Santa Claus was never read until Coca-Cola. Did you?
Really?
Is that real? I need someone in the chats.
I don't know. I feel like you shouldn't just start spreading rumors on the show.
No, but that's what I saw on the internet yesterday. So I'm actually crowdsourcing to ask, was it like green or whatever before, and then Coca-Cola just made it universal red? I need to know.
I don't know. I feel like that'd be pretty crazy.
That's important. When you saw yourself though as a news headline on X.
Yeah, so people who don't know this.
Yeah, for people that don't know, just to rewind, JJ just puts out, hey, this is the last news, or this is the last data dump of the season. We'll be doing it next week. All of a sudden, you got a couple people in your mentions like, hey, must be nice to take week 17 off, my championship week off.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, listen, I'm going to be with my family. This is free content. I'm still going to take care of my subs. But it turned into a thing,
right?
Where then Twitter X had the news blurb of fantasy expert who, I don't know, Andy from the fantasy footballers said expert.
Yeah, the expert tag. Yeah.
Yeah. But fantasy expert JJ Zachariason takes time off from the data dump to spend time with family.
Yeah,
like that was
literally the
actual
headline.
news item. Yeah,
that was a trending news item. Yeah, I mean, like the crazy thing is that people think that I'm like just quitting on them and I'm not doing any work. And guys, that's not the case. I am doing the 15 transaction show, which then you can get waivers and you know who to add and drop, which is important for the early part of the week. And then patrons are still getting the rankings and the data dump stuff, like the spreadsheet that I send out. And they'll be able to ask questions and do the Q&A via Patreon. All of that stuff is still happening. I am still creating content. The things that you will not get are the Sleepers episode, the 10 Trends episode, the mailbag, and this show, and then perspectives, like all the stuff that goes on after 15 transactions. But again, that kind of stuff this time of year actually is not that important. It's
right.
Way more important to get your lineup set and ready with rankings and start sit questions and the waiver wire stuff than it is to know the trends and whatnot, because that's the stuff that is more forecasted for future weeks. But this is the last week. This is all we got left. And so, yeah, I had to make some executive decisions. Hopefully people aren't that upset about it. I see it. I'm grateful that people are upset about it because that means that they enjoy the content. Right. And so I understand like disappointment. Like if you are disappointed, thank you. That means that you enjoy the content that I'm doing. But hopefully you at least then turn that disappointment to being understanding that I'm just not going to prioritize that free kind of content when, I want to spend time with my kiddos on Christmas. And, on top of that, like, people are like you're running they're saying that I wish I could take off, with my job. It's like, okay, I understand the cost benefit to this from a business perspective. Like I am hypothetically losing business by doing this, but this is a choice that I'm making given, the circumstances that are in front of me. There've been a lot of days in my past, man, where I had to work holidays and work certain days that I just didn't really want to work. And, at this point, I'm just making those choices from a prioritization standpoint, while still, in my opinion, helping people win fantasy championships and get to where they need to get.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, those Christmas games
it's brutal.
Brutal.
That's the thing. I'm still going to be working on Christmas because I got to make sure all the rankings are updated and stuff, because Roger Goodell and company are very,
and they would have been, they're not even good games this year, except for fantasy purposes, people that are going to be in their championships. Those are the people.
It is funny that we thought that like Denver, Kansas City was going to be this huge game, and it just doesn't matter at all now. I mean, it does for Denver, obviously, but it doesn't matter for Kansas City.
Yeah. Like all of them, there are not any playoff implications.
The one thing I want to say, just to kind of put a bow on this, guys, I've been doing the Late Round podcast for 8 years now, 9 years. And I quite literally have never missed a show in terms of like, oh, I just don't want to do it today. I'm just not going to do a 10 Trends episode. I let you know ahead of time when things are scheduled to not be released in a certain way, because I'm planning on that being the case. I've literally never just not done it. I have done 15 transactions every single week during the season for the last 8 or 9 years. And that to me, says enough about where my priorities are at with the content that I'm doing, just to be completely transparent. And so, if you're not getting 10 Trends or Sleepers or whatever, understand the disappointment, and I apologize for that, but it is just a different time of year, and I'm going to do the content that I think is just most important for people to really utilize and deploy for their championship teams.
Okay, this is a down and nerdy show. It's an interactive show, so leave a comment during the show or after the show. JJ, I need to thank you for your take on Colby Parkinson. Every expert had him top 5 tight end. You rightly called Ferguson. I listened and was grateful.
Let's talk about this on the news items.
Yeah. So you called that
to a degree. I mean, to a degree.
Yeah, and it could have been even more. Let's talk about that though in the today's fantasy news.
Today's fantasy news.
All right. First, we got the Thursday Night Football recap. Man, the first quarter, even second quarter, kind of was like, blah. Second half and overtime was like on steroids. I mean, it was a huge game for fantasy purposes.
Yeah. Someone's saying right now in chat, for the record, that Ferguson wasn't ranked higher in the weekly rankings. That's why I'm not saying, like, this is why I get tilted as a fantasy analyst sometimes. You can be right, but you'll always be wrong. Yeah. I definitely didn't rank, I had Colby Parkinson as tight end 9 this week in my rankings, I think it was. And consensus was a spot ahead of me. The main reason for that is because I like Colston Loveland a lot more than consensus, and we'll get to that in a second, or a decent bit more. He jumped Colby Parkinson, and I think that was actually one of the bigger, decisions that folks were making this week, was that Parkinson versus Loveland. So fingers crossed that Loveland comes through. I don't know if he's going to come through, but fingers crossed he comes through. But the Parkinson Ferguson thing, I think what people have to realize is that when you're doing rankings, you're looking at median outcomes, right? Generally speaking, when I get lower in the rankings, then I start to shift only to ceiling outcomes, because I don't care about a floor of 1 point versus 3 points. It just doesn't matter enough, right? And so, but like the elite guys, like, you need to make sure that you're getting something. Like, maybe you see DeAndre Swift having we'll see if he, hopefully he's healthy. DeAndre Swift having a similar floor or median outcome as, a Christian McCaffrey or Devon Achane or something like that. But from a ceiling perspective, I'll shift the elite guy up just because if I like his ceiling a little bit more, vice versa, whatever. But with Colby Parkinson and at the tight end position, I think what people really need to realize, because I've seen so many people on social media today getting tilted about starting Colby Parkinson. Guys, this is the way the tight end position works. This is just tight end, right? Like, I don't think Colby Parkinson was a bad process play. I don't think he was a bad play at all. He had over 70% of the routes yesterday. He actually did run more routes this week than Terrence Ferguson did. I think one more route. Ferguson ran more routes last week, and that's why I kept reiterating on the show to, yes, get excited about Parkinson, but don't be overly excited about him, because there is a chance that this goes south, right? Like, that's the balance that we're looking at whenever we're making rankings and we're making these decisions, is that there's a floor component and a ceiling component. And for Parkinson, that floor component probably wasn't as good as what people were generally thinking. It was the ceiling component that was intriguing. No Devontae Adams. Parkinson's been a really great red zone threat for them. And then obviously those looks could hypothetically be going more to Parkinson. But I said on the show multiple times this week how he hadn't seen a 20% target share during the stretch where he was seeing a lot of fantasy production. It was very much touchdown driven. So what happens? Well, Colby Parkinson gets a decent amount of work, but he didn't find the end zone when that's literally what we needed him to do. We were saying there's just a better chance for that player to find the end zone this week than there was when Devontae Adams was there. I mean, the Rams ran more 13 personnel yesterday than any team. This is via PFF. I think Nate Yonke was tweeting about this. More than any team that we've seen over the last 20 plus years in a single game. They ran so much 13 personnel. And so, that obviously allowed Terrence Ferguson to get more work, which is why I thought he was a good deep sleeper, and that ended up, generally hitting. But I do think that people's minds are a little bit warped in the way that they view, especially tight ends and stuff, because when we look at projections, again, I've said this before, touchdowns could be 0.4 from a projection standpoint. Okay. But it's more binary when you actually play. That when these guys actually perform, they're either scoring or they're not scoring. Right. And so therefore, Colby Parkinson doesn't score, so his total doesn't look that good. But if he does score, no one's saying anything right now, right? It's just the binary impact of touchdowns for a touchdown, not only a touchdown dependent player in Colby Parkinson, but a touchdown dependent position in tight end. That's what we have with tight ends. So I think Parkinson was still an okay process play. I'm glad I was a little bit lower than the market and higher on Terrence Ferguson, but I'm not the people who are like, well, why didn't you rank Ferguson higher than Parkinson? Because that's bad process. Okay. It's not a good process to do that. But that's my general thoughts in that situation.
All right. Well, what about the Puka, JSN, Stafford, even Kenneth Walker? Kenneth Walker was the first half guy. It was like, okay, well, nice to have now that you're out of the playoffs basically with them.
Yeah. I know that this is an interactive show, so I also read chat while this is going on. And someone said, that's why you have to take the content of what analysts that are sharp like JJ say. I don't blindly follow anyone's rankings. I listen to the analysis, sharp people like JJ, Harmon, McFarland, etc. And yeah, I you can look at my rankings and hopefully follow my rankings and get, good results. I'm just saying that like you can't assume that all that all results are going to be, or that anything you do versus rankings is going to be perfect. It's just not. There's too much variance in this game. We're playing odds, we're playing probability, and in the case of Colby Parkinson, it didn't go in his favor. Variance was not on his side. He didn't score a touchdown. And he was a touchdown dependent type play. And process wise, how can you say it was bad when they targeted their tight ends as much as they did? It just didn't go his way. All right, let's talk about Puka Nacua and company. Yeah, I mean, look, Puka was my number one overall player this week, basically, or wide receiver this week, because him without Devontae Adams, he was bound to see a really high target share. He saw that really high target share. He then took advantage of these big plays. He's just good, right? Like he's a game breaking type wide receiver. And then obviously, we saw what happened with JSN in the first half of that game. They finally got him involved more in the second half. Sam Darnold, I still think had a shaky game. Like he wasn't great. We look at the result of that game. We're like, oh, he came in the clutch, and he did. But they also had, he had
two big interceptions.
Yes, he had horrible picks, and then there was the Shaheed return that kept them in that game. That was really the turning point in that game. And props to Seattle. I mean, it was great to see that. That game was probably the best game of the year in general, right? And so like I'm not saying this to like crap on Sam Darnold, but he's just not been nearly as good as just a real NFL quarterback over the last handful of games. That scares me a little bit from a fantasy perspective. But JSN got it done. That was good to see him score at the very end of that game. I know a lot of us needed that for our own teams and our best ball bags. But yeah, I mean, it was just an incredible game. I was tweeting about East Coast dads, and people think that when I tweet about East Coast dads, I'm complaining. I'm not complaining. I'm just a joke, guys. It's just a fun thing. I love the game of football. I enjoyed the living crap out of that game. It was awesome, and hope we get more of that this weekend.
Okay, let's move on to the Saint. I guess the other thing is last week we knew there was going to be a lot of good games. This week there looks like there could be some stinkers this week, and so like if you had Puka, you're in a good spot, or even JSN, Kenneth Walker. If you didn't have those guys, you're like, oh, I'm not sure my guys can overcome it, especially with some of these injuries we're about to talk about. Saints and Cardinals running backs. I can't believe we're even mentioning that. I thought it was so important, though, that we put this as bullet point number 2.
Yeah.
Because you got Devin Neal, who's on the IR now.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Cardinals. Bam Knight's out. Now Michael Carter's their guy. Obviously, people are in a tough spot right now. So your thoughts on those running backs?
I've found it interesting this week that people are not that high on, or as high as I thought they would be on Michael Carter. Mostly because he stepped into that game against Houston against Houston last week and dominated the touches. Like I'm talking like bell cow workload for Michael Carter last week when Bam Knight went down. And to me, he was the very obvious, top waiver priority if he was still out there, on the waiver wire, and hopefully you're able to get him. But we've already seen Jonathan Gannon this week multiple times talk up Michael Carter as their RB1. And I think that we're going to probably see that be the case. And they get a great matchup against Atlanta this week. And then they also get a matchup next week against Cincinnati. And so if Michael Carter shows up this week, that's great for fantasy, obviously. And then next week they get Cincinnati. And so he would probably get a big workload there. And so I'm just a little bit surprised. Like it's an offensive environment that I think doesn't it feel like that game total should be over 50? That Falcons Cardinals game. I'm a little bit concerned that it's not.
Well, it's at 48.5. But again, you look at Raiders and Texans, like 38.5 total.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's one of the better games this week, the Cardinals Falcons. But I'm just saying, like that's a good game environment. He's going to be probably their bell cow. I mean, just given all of the tea leaves and reading the tea leaves and seeing what's going on there. So I'm pretty high on Michael Carter. Now, when it comes to the Saints running backs, the thing that's been really interesting to me, and I try to talk about this on 15 transactions, where I'm like, I mean, I don't really know which direction to go, right? Like I was like so 50-50 with, and I think there's going to be a 50-50 split, whatever. And again, I try to look at like what the sentiment is around these players during the week, because especially with running backs, where it's going to be so driven by how the coaches just give them the ball. I've been really surprised to see so many people calling Audric, and even Sigmund Bloom, who was on Perspectives. That's his show on Perspectives this week. Bloom was really high on Estime, and Bloom lives in New Orleans. He knows what's going on with that team. And I then realized, like, not just through talking to him, but a lot of other people, that Estime is probably the guy that you want in this backfield. But let me just throw this out to you guys. Okay. This is what happened last week. Okay. Devin Neal gets hurt. They have Evan Hall, who went to Northwestern. He was an all-around back. He had like a pretty good receiving profile in college. And then Audric Estime, who went to Notre Dame, he's kind of bounced around a little bit. He's an early down bruiser, but does not have a pass catching profile like at all. Okay. Like he didn't have that coming out of school at all. So the reason I preface with all of that is because in that game for New Orleans last week against Carolina, Evan Hall was the one who was seeing more of the designed runs. So the early down work, whereas Audric Estime was stepping in and he was their hurry up, their 2-minute back, who was also seeing some work on the ground too. Right. And he made more plays. Like he, when I went back and I finally was able to watch that a couple times, I do think that Estime looked better in the limited sample that we saw, but it's such a limited sample that it's really hard for me to take so much away from it. So it's been a little bit surprising to me to see all the Audric Estime love this week. And I know it seems crazy that you might be sitting there being like, I haven't seen any Audric Estime love. Analysts have been out there just being like, Audric, maybe it's just a meme or something, but it's like Audric Estime league winner. Like he's going to crush it. They get Tennessee next week and they get the Jets this week. And to me, I think that you can add Estime. I would have a hard time playing Estime, even though it's a really good spot. I would only do it if I didn't have another flex. And then you can add him though to see what would happen for next week, right? Like if one of these guys does emerge. The funny thing is that I liked Evan Hall a lot as a prospect. I wouldn't be surprised if I just liked him more than Estime as a prospect. And so that could maybe be playing a role here in the way that I would view how this plays out. But it's such a small sample, man. I mean, even these next two games, it's such a small sample. The Saints could go in a lot of different directions with how they actually deploy this backfield. No one really knows. And it would be silly for me to sit on this show and be like, I definitely think, is there a high variance move to go Estime and just use him if you're a huge underdog? Sure. If you're a favorite using Audric Estime, that's where I'd be a little bit more concerned, So to me, the Saints backfield is just really, really up in the air. And I don't want to be the analyst that just says it without actual conviction. And I'm not saying that Bloom didn't have conviction or anyone else. They have conviction. I just don't in this situation. And I'm not going to pretend like I do. I'm not going to be surprised if Audric Estime goes off. I won't be surprised if it's a 50-50 split. I think it can just go in a lot of different directions.
All right, let's talk about Drake London and Marvin Harrison Jr. And if you told me at the beginning of the season that this is how I would be positioning this question, I would have laughed. But Drake London and Marvin Harrison Jr. as spoilers, as taking away from Kyle Pitts,
true,
and Michael Wilson.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way you're phrasing that. I'm gonna actually respond and just say spoilers as my reaction because that's the perfect way to think of this. I think if Drake London plays, you got to start Drake London.
Yeah,
right. Like if he's out there, he was dominating before he went down. He even came out and said he had other injuries that he's been dealing with, and it's like. This dude is doing this right now this season while dealing with other injuries. Like how good is Drake London? Like this dude's incredible. But yeah, with Kyle Pitts, and I said this on the 10 Trends episode this week, Kyle Pitts with Drake London this year, 19% target share per game. Without him, significantly higher. It's like 10 percentage points higher, right? And we saw last week, obviously, he was the focal point of that passing game. If Drake London's back, even in it's a good matchup for Kyle Pitts against Arizona. So I still think that Pitts is a good play. But Drake London being back definitely would hurt Kyle Pitts. Like I think you're still playing Pitts. I still think he's a tight end one. But it's definitely a pretty big detriment. And then, man, I'll tell you what, the Marvin Harrison Jr. thing is much more difficult for me to sort through as an analyst because I had talked about this as well on the show in the past, how Jacoby Brissett has been so good for this offense because number one, he throws into more tight windows than Kyler Murray would. He's a little bit more aggressive than Kyler Murray is. They're throwing the ball more. They're just in better scripts overall. But Brissett also, even when Marvin Harrison Jr. was healthy with Brissett for those handful of games, Marvin Harrison Jr., according to fantasy points data, saw his highest first read target shares in those games with Jacoby Brissett versus how he performed with Kyler Murray. So what does that mean? Well, it means that Kyler Murray is probably going through his progressions a little bit more than Jacoby Brissett is, whereas Brissett is mostly just looking at his, locking onto his first read and throwing it that way a little bit more frequently. And that can be the difference between why we're seeing, Michael Wilson do what he's doing with Jacoby Brissett, because there's no other person that could possibly be the first read at wide receiver when Michael Wilson is on the field and Marvin Harrison Jr. is not. But when you add Marvin Harrison Jr. to the mix, you have to think he's going to be their top read.
Yeah.
But I think if Marvin Harrison Jr. plays, because he's coming off the injury, I'm still playing Michael Wilson over Marvin Harrison Jr. this week because he's coming off the injury. But that situation becomes so much cloudier than, I think the Drake London one is a lot more straightforward, where Kyle Pitts can still play. He can still be in your lineup, but temper expectations. But Drake London should probably be in your lineup. But when it comes to the Arizona situation, great matchup overall because Atlanta's defense isn't playing as well. But man, it could get, it's a higher variance situation in place for Michael Wilson to be.
All right, let's talk about the Chiefs and Rashee Rice. First of all, Rashee Rice, I didn't even know that he was in concussion protocol last week until it came out this week. I thought Xavier Worthy was the guy that was in concussion protocol.
Yeah, Rice got smacked towards the end of that game, just crushed in that game. So he's got. I'm assuming he's out this week because he didn't get that full limited practice in yesterday. So I'm assuming Rice is going to be out. Maybe this is maybe Worthy. Is my reaction. Maybe Hollywood steps up, but it's you're in an environment. I think the total in this is well under 4. It's a 38.
Yeah, it's in the 30s. Yeah.
Yeah. Low total game. I don't think that you can just lock Worthy in and say, he's a definite top 24 wide receiver. Tennessee has gotten burned at times this year. This on the perimeter, on the outside.
Oh, their secondary is terrible. Someone shared it yesterday. I forget who it was, but if you take a look at their roster at the start of the season to now, there is literally no one on the secondary that is currently active for the Titans.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do think that there's a chance that we see and not only that, Tennessee, because of that / because they can stop the run better than I think people realize.
They got Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat down on the line.
Right. And so they've actually become sort of an odd pass funnel, despite being a team that everyone could see a great game script against and just have this really run heavy game script. And so, there's a chance that Worthy is usable. Just know, it's Xavier Worthy. There's going to be a lot of variance there. I'm not going to be surprised either way if he has a big game or if he does absolutely nothing. Hollywood Brown, same kind of boat. And then I think the guy that would be more obvious is Travis Kelce because he occupies the same area of the field as Rashee Rice does. We'll see how checked in he is in this game. But at the same time, the dude is only, if this is it for him, these are his last 2 games playing football. He's going to probably want to go ham. So, So that's kind of how I feel about this situation. Low team total overall. I don't think they're going to be massively aggressive with Gardner Minshew. And I don't really know, with them being out of the playoff picture, I don't know how they're going to want to approach things overall.
Yeah.
Maybe I haven't said this take out. I haven't said this on a show this week.
So a Brashard Smith take.
Yeah. I have this feeling deep down that they're going to want to feature Brashard Smith down the stretch. So maybe I'll add him to the look ahead waiver wire to just stash, although they get Denver next week, but stash Brashard Smith, see if they use him a little bit more this week.
Yeah. All right. The Bears, unfortunately, not. And this is what stinks is because we've got our guys that have brought us to where we are in the semifinals. I've got Rice, I've got Burden. Both those guys not going to be playing this week. Both Adunze and Burden not playing this week.
Yeah.
You've got Loveland season on here.
I think Colston Loveland's a big could benefit greatly from this because the number one thing with him is just routes and the last time we saw when Rome Odunze has been out, they've seen a little bit of an uptick in 12 personnel rate to by 5-6 percentage points. So there's been something, but I think in this scenario it has to be more frequent. They're going to have to use both Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland a lot. Because Olamide Zaccheaus is their 2 right now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a problem. DJ Moore, I think, could have a big game too. just based on volume. We're going to talk about this in the main event, but that's kind of how I view this. I mean, I think Caleb Williams is tough to trust, even though their team total is still okay. And we'll see what's going on with DeAndre Swift, because I don't think that. I mean, I think he's going to go, but he's a little bit banged up.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Zacchaeus as a plug and play. If you had Burton or
he's a sleeper.
Yeah.
He's a sleeper. I mean, he's someone that is not going to, I mean, look, when you're the clear 2 remaining, number 2, you can't just be stapled to the slot and just only play a slot role for them. So he's going to run a lot of routes, and, in that offense, in that environment, it might not be that bad.
This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Apple Card members can earn unlimited daily cash back on everyday purchases wherever they shop. This means you could be earning daily cash on just about anything, like a slice of pizza from your local pizza place or a latte from the corner coffee shop. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app to see your credit limit offer in minutes. Subject to credit approval. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com. Oh man, it is back, and it's bigger and more fun than ever. Toyota is all in all season with another year of Toyota Game Day giveaways, giving football fans the chance to win big every week of the NFL season. How? Simply predict which big plays will happen during the second half of each Sunday night football game. That's it. If you want a new 2026 Toyota Sequoia, how about Brock Purdy's favorite Sequoia? It could be yours simply by playing Toyota Game Day giveaways. Plus, thousands of prizes are up for grabs, including tickets to any regular season NFL game next season, plus flights and accommodation, NFL shop gear, and more. Play for free across 22 weeks of action. Toyota is bringing the excitement as the official automotive partner of the NFL. Don't miss out. Visit toyota.com/NFL now to learn more. Toyota, let's go places. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Ends on 2/8/26. Open to legal residents of the 50 United States and D.C., 18 and over. For complete details, how to enter prizes, and official rules, visit toyotasgamedaygiveaways.com.
All right, you got Woody Marks, who is seen practicing today. Nick Chubb also back at practice. Now you've got Jahar Jordan.
Yeah.
Also, so what's your take on Woody Marks, especially since he's been like a late round brand guy for this year?
I'm worried because I am concerned about a lot of the coach speak that's gone on this week about Jahar Jordan, which has been plentiful, right? And then obviously Nick Chubb being back. Woody Marks seems to never not be in the blue tent. He's getting hurt every game, and he's not 100% right now. I mean, he's hopefully going to play this week, but he goes from being like, if none of that happened last week, not only would I have advanced in one of my leagues, but if none, I lost by 0.4 in a league that I had Woody Marks. But if that doesn't happen last week, he doesn't get hurt, and we just see like a normal workload for Woody Marks, he'd be a top 15, 20 running back pretty comfortably this week against Vegas. Like, we'd feel great about him. But Jahar Jordan steps up. I think he's going to see more work this week. Like, I think they're going to have some sort of a rotation with these guys to a degree. Now, if Woody Marks plays, I think he'd be the 1A in that backfield. So he'd be like more of a flex play. But I think if that didn't happen last week, he would just be a smash play instead of a flex play.
Okay, you've got Dolphins Ewers. They're moving on from Tua. Like, pretty much permanently. He's now like an emergency third quarterback.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Zach Wilson's the backup.
When you know it's over.
Yeah. Zach Wilson's the backup, and you put worried again. Copy paste.
I just copied paste. I went from worried about Woody Marks to maybe even more worried about the Dolphins offense.
Yeah. It's like really like two players in particular, Achane and Waddle. Like those are the guys.
Waller too. Waller was set up in a great spot against Cincinnati this week. You know, the best tight end defense by far for tight ends in all of fantasy football. And Waller came through last week. But I just think, I said this all in the mailbag episode this week where like we don't know what Ewers is about. But if you just look at history and you look at like day 3 quarterbacks who are stepping in to get some work in their offense because, things are dust for that team and they wanted to bench the court. How often do these like come out and we're like, wow, that's a great quarterback that they just happen to have, sitting on their bench right now. And Cincinnati's defense has been playing a little bit better. I said this on the show, but four of their top 7 games defensively by EPA per play have come over the last 4 weeks. And that's been against New England, Baltimore twice, and Buffalo. Like they're playing a little bit better defensively. And so I'm a little bit concerned about what this means for the entire team. Devon Achane, I bumped him down a tier, like a whole different tier in my rankings. Like I don't think he's part of the elite tier anymore with CMC and company. Jalen Waddle got bumped down quite a bit. I'm really concerned about Waddle too. I was already way lower than consensus on Waddle earlier this week whenever I compared my initial rankings to consensus, because for whatever reason, I don't think people realize that like Cincinnati's been actually pretty good against wide receivers, especially number 1 wide receivers. And now you get Quinn Ewers. I think you're just hoping that he can find the end zone and like have a big play or something like that. Like I just don't know if there's going to be that much consistency. So overall, I think it's a downgrade for the entire Dolphins offense. And remember, Devon Achane last year without Tua, he was averaging like 8 to 9 PPR points per game. It was bad. I think it's going to be better than that, but be aware.
And again, that's what's tough about this week is that the horses that brought you there they're either banged up or there's some issues going on with a lot of them. It's going to be a tilt fest. It's already been a tilt fest for me. It's one of those things where like I'm in all these semifinals and I'm like, okay, yeah. I've got Puka here, but oh man, I'm facing Puka here. I got JSN here. I'm facing JSN here. And then I'm looking at and it's the same players that are appearing. And so I'm just hoping that everything evens out and I can win a couple championships and feel good and, not have to be frustrated at some bad variance in the playoffs. You'll have to just people listen to their daily affirmations. You'll just have to listen to your episode with Sigmund Bloom on Perspectives just over and over again, just on repeat.
Yeah, it was helpful. Talking to Bloom is always a very helpful thing to do.
All right, you've got Dalton Kincaid. He didn't suffer a setback, but they are dealing with the same injury. So I don't know what exactly that means. Yeah, but rough situation for Dalton Kincaid this week.
Yeah, I'm going to say tough to trust. And even if Dawson Knox were to be the starter, I think he's tough to trust. It's not a great environment for their passing attack this week. I think it sets up to be more of a ground game for them against Cleveland. And Cleveland's been a little bit worse on, against the rush of late. So, I think it's just tough to trust Dalton Kincaid in general. And let alone this injury. If I had a Colston Loveland, I would be playing him over a Dalton Kincaid this week.
All right, we got not so pretty Ricky. Ricky Pearsall seems to have aggravated that PCL in his knee again. So we're not going to be playing for a while. You have Juwan season continues as your reaction.
Yeah. Look, Juwan Jennings is playing great. He's scoring. Yeah. He's got 6 touchdowns in his last 6. He's seeing consistent target shares over 20%. They get a matchup. I think Sauce is going to be out again this week, or at least he hasn't practiced this week. So they get another great matchup in a dome. This is in Indy. Their team total got to be over 28 points, I think, right now.
And it's on a Monday night. That's what I like.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, guys. I think my week is going to really hinge on Christian McCaffrey and this passing it. Like basically the entire San Francisco offense. They have a 26.25 total right now. Basically this whole San Francisco offense. So if you're watching Monday Night Football and they are S-ing the B on Monday night, then you know that I am also S-ing the B within my house.
All right. Njoku, actually, after we started recording the show, he is out this week. So Fannin season continues.
Yeah, tough matchup, but I still think he's good to play. Fannin is. I talked about this on the 10 Trends episode a bit, even though it was more of a matchup-driven thing. Buffalo, the toughest defense against tight ends, but Cleveland now the number 1 team in target share to tight ends. And Harold Fannin just being used so much that you got to think that they're going to find a way to get him the ball. So I still think Fannin's in play. His ceiling's not insane, but I think he at least has a floor, which we can't say for a lot of tight ends.
Today's data.
All right, let's get to today's data. Tell us what we're looking at here, JJ.
Yeah, what are we looking at? So this is target shares to each position by team. So team target shares in 2025 and then in 2024, and then the difference between the two. I figured since this is the last one, we could do like a little recap-y type look, and see how things have changed year over year. And I highlighted some of the bigger ones with the difference on the difference column on the right. But you can see, like in 2025, Arizona has targeted their tight ends at the second highest rate in football. Like I just said, Cleveland's number one. Baltimore has targeted their tight ends at a high rate. Not surprising. Pittsburgh, Arthur Smith loves tight ends. And then you look at running back target share. This is pre-Thursday Night Football. I didn't have that data in here, but like the Rams, 10.2% target share, which this is what I talked about on the show also earlier this week, how the Rams have been bottom 3 in running back target share now for like 7 or 8 straight seasons.
Yeah, it is funny. You take a look at their running back share this year compared to last year, and it's like almost exactly the same.
It's like minus 0.1 or plus 0.1 difference. But I want to call out the biggest deltas, like the biggest differences from one year to the next. You have Atlanta saw a big dip in wide receiver target share, which is not that surprising given the fact that Drake London's been banged up a little bit, and they're not like Darnell Mooney just hasn't looked like himself, this year compared to last year. Cleveland saw a big dip because they're targeting their tight ends more. Indianapolis has seen a big dip in their wide receiver target share, which is a combination of both. They are targeting their running backs a little bit more, but tight end is really the difference, right? It's Tyler Warren. Like that's why that's happening. New Orleans is targeting their wide receivers a lot more this year. You have the Giants targeting them a lot less. San Francisco targeting them a lot less because George Kittle's good and CMC obviously is grabbing hold of a lot of that target share. And then at tight end, Chicago's targeting their tight ends more. Indy, like I said, they're targeting their tight ends more. The Rams plus 9% year over year in tight end target share, which is cool. Just given all like the stuff that we've talked about with their heavy tight end sets. New England's targeting them less tight ends. And then at running back, there's only 2 to call out. New Orleans has seen an 11% dip. That's not an 11, that's an 11 percentage point dip, right? So it's way more than 11% because they're at a 15% running back target share this year when last year was at 26%. And then with San Francisco, we're seeing a rise in running back target share of 13.3%, which obviously is because Christian McCaffrey is a thing again. So it's fun to look at this and just like ask yourself, why is this happening? And this is a really good example of why I always talk about, because back when I was doing fantasy analysis back in like 2014, 2015, a really trendy thing to do was to associate target shares and usage to coordinators, right? And you can do that to some degree as a whole. Like we know that Arthur Smith will probably use tight ends a little bit. We know that, Sean McVay usually targets his wide receivers a lot. But the thing that's really interesting is that most of these instances where we're seeing really big differences from 2024 to 2025, it's all personnel driven, right? Everything I just said was basically because of a player being added or lost on that team, like Christian McCaffrey being lost last year and then added back to that lineup. Well, imagine that. They've seen a 13.3% point increase in running back target share this year. Or Alvin Kamara's hurt. Oh, look at, and they got a new coaching staff, but Alvin Kamara's been gone. Minus 11% target share for running backs. So I think it's a really good example of why we should be really focused on personnel just as much as we are these coaching things. When I think a lot of people still are like, well, fantasy analysts aren't looking enough into coaching tendencies and stuff. It's like, no, we are. Like, hopefully we are. I am. Like, I'm looking at coaching tendencies and stuff. But in the end, guys, good coaches will morph their offenses around their players. And when there's a change in player personnel, that's when we can see a change in fantasy football.
Good stuff. Looking at some of these numbers, like thinking of like the non-personnel number, like the Chicago tight end numbers. It's good stuff. All right. Let's move on to the main event.
The late round main event.
All right. Let's start with Jacoby Brissett. Players you like more than consensus this week.
I'm making a stand apparently this week with Jacoby Brissett because I have Brissett at QB3. Now there's a giant.
That is crazy.
There's a giant tier 2, to be fair. Okay.
Yeah.
But I have him QB3 this week, and consensus has him at QB9. I have him at QB3 because he's had a QB1 performance every single week as a starter. His team is tops in the league in pass rate over expected. Atlanta's a pretty mediocre matchup by adjusted points allowed. They've been worse of late. Like I said this earlier, the only thing I worry about is a 22.5 point total for Jacoby Brissett. But, I think the game total is good. Like, Atlanta has a 25 point implied team total this week. I think Jacoby Brissett's in a good spot. I have him ranked ahead of everyone outside of Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts this week. It's crazy.
All right. Running back, you've got Amari Hampton. The Amari Hampton owners rejoice at this.
Well, I'll switch this up if we get news on Quinnen Williams, but I don't know if he's going to end up going, and I don't know if they'll force it because they really, are likely out of it from a playoff perspective. But if Quinnen Williams is out, I think given the way the Chargers have been throwing the ball recently and the lack thereof, I think they're going to try to pound the rock. And while Kamani Vidal has played more snaps, he's more of the hurry up back, the pass pro back. Amari Hampton is still getting more work on the ground than Kamani Vidal. So against Dallas, I have him 6 spots ahead of consensus. Maybe that consensus changes if Quinnen Williams is out. I know my rank will change a little bit if he's in. But right now I'm assuming he's out. That's why I have him where I have him.
All right. You got DJ Moore as your wide receiver.
Yeah. Wide receiver 20 for DJ Moore. Consensus wide receiver 26. There's no Luther Burden. There's no Rome Odunze. There's still almost an implied 23 point total for Chicago. Green Bay's a middle of the road matchup for wide receivers. I just think he gets by on volume. Like, you just should see. I mean, I think we can lock in at least 8 targets for DJ Moore in this game.
Oh man, it is back and it's bigger and more fun than ever. Toyota is all in all season with another year of Toyota Game Day giveaways, giving football fans the chance to win big every week of the NFL season. How? Simply predict which big plays will happen during the second half of each Sunday night football game. That's it. If you want a new 2026 Toyota Sequoia, how about Brock Purdy's favorite Sequoia? It could be yours simply by playing Toyota Game Day giveaways. Plus, thousands of prizes are up for grabs, including tickets to any regular season NFL game next season, plus flights and accommodation, NFL shop gear, and more. Play for free across 22 weeks of action. Toyota is bringing the excitement as the official automotive partner of the NFL. Don't miss out. Visit toyota.com/NFL now to learn more. Toyota, let's go places. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Ends on 2/8/26. Open to legal residents of the 50 United States and DC, 18 and over. For complete details, how to enter prizes and official rules, visit toyotasgamedaygiveaways.com. Get almost anything you need delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get a chicken parm delivered. A day at the lake, that's a no. A Philly cheesesteak, that's a yes. An afternoon stroll, sorry, no. A burrito bowl, happily, yes. What about a day of sunshine? Not happening. A box of fine wines, yes, that is happening. Delivery is on its way. Okay, how about some clear skies? No. Well then, how about some french fries? Yep. A little escape? No. A delicious bowl of grapes? Yes. Yes, that. How about a freshly cut lawn? Can't help you there, but barbecued prawns. Order it and it's on its way. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now.
Okay. And then tight end, DJ Moore's running mate, and both these guys were the cover boys. Colston Loveland.
Yeah, look, I don't have like massive differences at tight end. I could have said Terrence Ferguson, but he already played. But I have Loveland in a tier that I could rank him all the way up to like tight end 4 this week. Like I think he's in a really good spot. Could see an uptick in routes with all these wide receiver injuries. I think there's going to be more 12 personnel like I talked about earlier. He's already had about a 17% target share per game rate since week 9. And the matchup is fine enough. It's a little bit below average, but I do think there's a chance that Colston Loveland comes through with a decent game.
All right, you got bold predictions for week 16, starting with Michael Carter being a top 12 running back.
Yeah, man. I already talked about Jonathan Gannon giving Carter some praise. He said that he's very comfortable with him as the feature back in that offense. He had a 78% running back rush share last week, 11% target share. His route participation rate was 72%, which is, I mean, for context, if we're over 50%, we're feeling decent about running backs. Over 70% is the elite stuff. I mean, that's really, really good. Atlanta's been a plus matchup. As long as he gets work, I feel pretty good about him giving us some fantasy production. I don't know. I guess I'm just high on this game, but the reason I'm high on this game is because we're in a dome environment and there's just a lot of crud around the league this week.
Right. And then you've got Houston has 8+ sacks this week.
They did do this year. Okay. Earlier this year against Buffalo. But it's only happened 3 times. That's why I'm saying this is a bold prediction. Because I mean, saying that something's going to happen for the 4th time this year is relatively bold. But
yeah,
this is pretty simple. According to PFF, only the Chargers and the Browns have allowed more pressures per drop back than the Raiders have. Okay. And then per PFF data, only the Texans have forced more pressure. I really phrased that incorrectly. I should just say the Texans have forced the most pressure, but I said only the Texans have forced more pressure than anyone in the NFL. They've forced the most pressure. So you have this pressure rate matchup, and you have a team in Vegas that has like an 11.5 point implied team total.
That's what it is. Yeah. It's a game total of 37.5, but Houston's 14.5 point favorites.
Right. So you have a 14.5. So what that tells us is that Vegas is likely going to be throwing the ball a lot and dropping back a lot to try to come back. And that just creates more opportunities for these sacks. So I'm going to say 8+ sacks for the Houston defense this week.
Okay. Let's look ahead to the look ahead waiver wire. And again, for most people, this is the final look ahead.
I mean, hopefully you don't have to rely on many of these guys, to be fair.
Yeah. And hopefully not playing in week 18 in your league.
I'll go through this relatively quickly because, it's not something that I think people need to dwell on because, if you're in the championship, your team's pretty good.
Right.
JJ McCarthy played decent last week, hopefully plays decent this week against the Giants, and then they get Detroit next week. Tyler Shuck gets Tennessee. We talked about the Titans earlier. Michael Carter still rostered in just 36% of leagues over on Yahoo. So get him because they get Cincinnati next week. You could pick up Nick Chubb and Jawar Jordan. I would probably go after Jordan just to see if they get weird with the usage in that Texans backfield. Emmanuel Wilson, even if Josh Jacobs plays, which we didn't talk about on the news items, but even if Josh Jacobs plays this week, there's some fear that that knee injury is just lingering and they're going to use more Emmanuel Wilson. So I would add Emmanuel Wilson if he's out there regardless. Chris Rodriguez gets Dallas next week. Devin Singletary gets Vegas. I still think Tyrone Tracy is the guy that you want just based on last week's usage, but there could be injury. Like if Tyrone Tracy goes down this week, then, you get Singletary against Vegas, but there might even be some usage and usability with him against Vegas regardless. Audric Estime and Evan Hall, talked about them. Get your running back handcuffs. Jaden Reed, decent slot matchup next week. Great slot matchup this week. So you might even be able to play him this week. Keyshawn Boutte gets the Jets next week. A.D. Mitchell, just getting a high target share in that offense. Luther Burden, if he's back, he gets San Francisco. You could look at Olamide Zaccheaus because he would then get San Francisco if Luther Burden's out. Colson Loveland, same deal. Everything we talked about the Bears. Brenton Strange plus matchup against the Colts. You could look at Terrence Ferguson and Colby Parkinson. No one wants to hear about Colby Parkinson, but you could look at both of them for next week in a game that they should. I would imagine. I haven't looked at any look ahead lines or anything, but I would imagine that the Rams are going to have a team total of 29 points next week against Atlanta. Yeah. Theo Johnson gets Vegas. New Orleans at defense, they get Tennessee. New England, they're still out there in over half of leagues, and people might be dropping them this week because they get Baltimore, but they get the Jets next week. Tampa Bay gets Quinn Ewers in Miami next week, and then the Giants get the Raiders. So those are the look-ahead waiver wire targets.
All right, good stuff. And again, only one more real week left after this season. It's kind of crazy. Has it gone fast for you or not really?
This season?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone pretty fast. I would say it's been a real, and I talked about this with Bloom a lot on Perspectives, but it's probably been a top 2 or 3 weirdest season of my fantasy football career. So, and I say that because there's just not been that much consistency with anyone. We don't have many league winners that came from the late rounds. We don't have a ton of league winners from the early rounds even. We have these handful of running backs, these handful of wide receivers, and then the rest. There hasn't been quarterbacks that have really, really stood out. Drake May obviously has, but Josh Allen's having a decent season, but Lamar Jackson's doing what he's doing. Jane Daniels has been hurt. Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow. There's just been a lot of that. Like, it's just kind of been like an attrition thing, and you seeing
surviving.
And just really, really trying to survive. And that's what makes those bad beats even worse, because similar to the real NFL right now, right? The real NFL, there's a ton of parity.
Yeah.
There is no team that we feel unbelievably great about to win the Super Bowl this year, right?
Yeah.
Even the Rams, we thought they were flawless and they lost last night, right? They're probably the NFC favorites, but regardless, it's like there's no team that is going to obviously represent their conference at this point. And so
the Rams lost to the Panthers a few weeks ago too.
I think it's very similar to what we're experiencing in fantasy football, where if you have one of those bad beats, your team could probably easily have gone on to win a championship this year, because there's not going to be that many teams out there that are just absolutely destroying everybody. So it's just an interesting year. Hopefully, variance is on your side in the playoffs. And look, you're going to be frustrated and you're going to say fantasy football is all luck and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, there's a luck factor, guys, but there's a skill factor to get in the playoffs, to be able to make the right moves. And if you play in enough leagues and if you do this for a long enough time, those things will go your way more often than not. If you are paying attention, if you are, making moves based off of the right process.
Monitoring some news items that are being posted in our late round Discord in the News and Rumors actual channel. You've got Dylan Sampson out, and Justin Fields probably not going to play this week. Tyrod Taylor is going to be backing up Brady Cook against the Saints. So there you go. And with that being said, let's get on to one of my favorites, the quad box. All right, let's say goodbye, but first, let's see what 4 games we won. I think I know what game you won. It's the one you said it's pretty important to you.
It's important to me, but I think that there could be.
Are you really not going to put that on there?
You think I should do that first? I mean, it's an irrelevant.
Why wouldn't
game.
you?
It's an irrelevant game to real.
No, it's not.
To real football. All right,
yeah,
fine.
But we're not talking about real football.
I'll do Falcons Cardinals as my first one.
All right.
Because I think the fantasy implications are huge in that game.
You don't think the fantasy implications for the other game you're going to pick are huge?
What's the other game?
Niners Colts.
Oh yeah, I should have picked that probably.
Monday Night Football game.
Okay, put it up.
Rivers.
That's you. Look, for the first time all year, the last episode, you're going to win the quad box kitchen.
JT on one side, McCaffrey, Jennings, Kittle, Purdy on the other side.
All right, you should do it. You should do it.
You know what? I am going to do it just so you can't do it, and so I can say this is why we play fantasy football. I mean, yes, the Thursday Night Football the past 2 weeks have been fun / tilting.
Yeah,
but the Sunday or the Monday Night Football game.
If I get a CMC hammer, I'm going to be I'm going to be pantsless for the week.
Like when Darren Waller got 25 points and like vaulted me up at the best ball leaderboards in a few contests. I mean, that was just insane. So let's.
You know what? It's crazy. I haven't really had any of those moments this year.
Yeah,
it's always been bad, and I hope that my luck changes here in week 16.
All right, who's your second game?
Man, I'm leaning towards going with there's 2 games that are, I mean, these games are really rough.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. They're not like last week's games.
Here's where my mind's going. I think Patriots Ravens is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's a night game too.
I think that Packers Bears is pretty interesting.
Okay, you're almost there to the game that's
and then I think Chargers and Cowboys is the other one.
There you go.
And I think for fantasy implication purposes, I'm going to go Chargers Cowboys as the next.
That's the one I was going to pick. So I'll pick the other one and go the Sunday Night Football game. So I'm going Monday night, Sunday night. You know, I like the primetime games, but this is actually a legit primetime game. Patriots and Ravens. There's implications. There's fantasy implications. So give me Patriots and Ravens.
Someone in chat saying, why would you need to put a primetime game in the quad box? The whole point of this is just give our favorite. Fantasy.
These are the games. Like we're not doing like slate specific. Like what's the early? Because really, it only applies to early slate.
It's
and
just
now you got
very,
2 Saturday night.
It's just an easy, calming way to end this show.
Yeah, it's just a preview, really, of what's coming up, letting people know, hey, here are some games that we're excited about.
Yeah, I do want to say that 49. I should have probably put the 49ers game because I got a lot. My most live best ball team right now is a 49ers stack.
Yeah,
I got so much CMC in semifinal games that I probably should.
Even teams that have like Jonathan Taylor, you're not really sure like what to expect.
Right,
like he got
and
you
it's
here.
hard to judge off of last week because they were playing in Seattle.
Right, and he
By the way,
got you to this point, and it's.
I'm in a dynasty league against Hayden Winks this week, and it's an industry analyst league, and I lost Tua, who's my Superflex QB2, and guess who I'm playing in my QB2 spot? None other than the 44-year-old Philip Rivers. Yeah, I am. It's a really deep league, so it's not really easy to find.
Let's say Quinn Ewers was taken.
Oh yeah, he was long. He's been
Brady
rostered all year. Yeah, it's a dynasty league, so it's a deep roster dynasty league too. So there's like, I could play like Khalil Shakir over him, but I'm not trying to do. I'd rather just have fun with Philip Rivers on Monday night.
Yeah, you just want him to have a serviceable game. You just want him to not like.
But I
like double-digit points.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a tiebreaker in Superflex, you're almost always going with the quarterback.
Yeah. All right. Well, that will do it for the show. Especially, we see Dave is in chat, so it's time to probably get out of here. Appreciate you all for interacting with the show. Again, make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter because we got a newsletter coming out today. And then we've got some cool stuff that we're going to be doing in 2026. And then we also have today's Perspectives episode, mailbag episode, and obviously you're listening to this episode. So JJ, final thoughts.
Final thoughts are, first off, thank you everybody who's been watching this all year in season, because this is the first year that we've been doing the show. And it's been a lot of fun. And, I think it's like a really good wrap up of the week, kind of casual vibe type of show. And hopefully you felt that throughout the year while also listening to me, ranting and rambling and just saying stupid things. But I really appreciate everyone's support with it. This show's not going away either. I mean, like once January hits, we're still going to be doing some shows and whatnot.
Yeah, because it's an easy show. We get to come on here, and really just interact, put together, just talk about like what's happening.
Yeah.
It's a little more loose than what you're used to with the typical short form episodes.
Yeah. So, we're doing this still in January. We'll be doing, there's going to be becoming a Best Ball Bro recap episode that we'll be doing. There might even be some like best ball stuff in general. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff going on with late round. And then as people know, Brandon Gadula is starting in January. So we're going to have another employee with us that's going to be helping create content and do some cool studies and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I keep saying like, hey, this is the last one of the season and stuff, but it's just the last one in like a week and a half. And then we're back to doing off-season content, which in my opinion, the off-season content is where the process is built. And then once you get to the season, you're just executing for the most part. So the off-season stuff, in my opinion, is more important to your long-term success in fantasy football. Whereas obviously the in-season stuff is just necessary because we're trying to win fantasy championships.
You might even see this show in February from a different location.
Maybe.
You just never know. You never know what's going to happen in 2026, but it's going to be fun. We've already started talking about things, so it'll be fun. I appreciate just the privilege of getting this platform to be on this show with you, JJ. So thank you for having me. Thanks everyone for listening. Good luck in your semis and hopefully your finals as well. And we'll see you next time here on the Late Round Fantasy Football Show.
Get almost anything you need delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get a chicken parm delivered. A little escape? No. A delicious bowl of grapes? Yes, that. An afternoon stroll? Sorry, no. A burrito bowl? Happily, yes. A day of sunshine? No. A box of fine wines? Yes. Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than Saquon Barkley, the NFL's reigning leading rusher. I'm also the NFL's leading husher. Shh, hush up back there. Wow, I might have just set the hushing record. Well, almost. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.